You are listening to Modern Retrospect, retro hits and modern bits. I'm Yovan.
And I'm Joseph. In the vast array of Acolyte awarded indies, blockbuster AAAs, and all-around publicly advertised games, there's a niche assortment of little wonders that don't get much recognition or attention. It is a common occurrence due to the size of the medium, so we are here to highlight a few in as much detail as possible. We get to talk about 3 each, so maybe you'll find one you like.
If you like what you have been listening to so far, subscribe, rate us, or leave a message if you are feeling extra generous.
Alright, Yvonne, time to dig out some buried treasure. The whole point of this episode is to showcase a few of those games that are rarely heard of or barely get a whisper nowadays. They can be from any console and any point in time. Unlike the most anticipated games episode, we will only be talking about 3 each as a way to talk much more in depth for each entry. The more detail, the better. So, in making this list that we did when I asked you to pick 3, what was your feeling or strategy in like picking out these hidden gems?
Well, I wanted to make sure that I really got hidden gems, like really, really hidden gems, right? You know, at first I on my list I had things like The Last Story and things like that, but they're not as well known as other games. They still have a pretty good following and they're pretty well known compared to other games. So I really wanted to keep it to hidden gems. And also, there might be some games where I might want to do an episode, a specific episode for that game. So I didn't want to rush through it on here where we're doing a little bit more condensed overview of the game. Although, still pretty detailed. But that was my criteria. I wanted to put a spotlight on games that probably don't have a lot of a big following or they've kind of fallen into obscurity, but then I think are well-deserved of a hidden gem for one reason or another.
Yeah, it was a similar thing with me, but I have to say I did struggle a bit in trying to find some, because I had to dig back into my head of like more past titles, even though there are a few right now that I do feel are hidden gems or aren't that noticed very well. But also, I actually just remember this morning there was one game, I'm not going to mention it, but there was one game I realized, oh my god, why did I put down this list? And I realized, wait a second, that game's too good. I need to make sure like it might get an episode one day. And also, this is only the first part in a hidden gem episode that we plan to have, because there's a lot of games out there that are actually quite hidden and are also gems. So, Yvonne, how about you start? What is your first hidden gem for this episode?
Okay, so my first game on this list is ZombiU. It's a Wii U launch title, and this one is probably the least hidden of the gems because it's probably a little bit more well known, and it also came out for Windows and PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And it got bad reviews in those systems. It got actually better reviews on Wii U. Some mixed reviews here and there, but generally I think it reviewed a lot better in that system. And then when it came out for Windows and PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, it got pretty maligned, honestly. But I understand why, and I'll get into that. But let me set the table a little bit about this game. So it's a first-person survivor horror game from Ubisoft, and it came out November 2012 for the Wii U. It was a launch game. I did buy it at launch.
I do remember it very well, actually. I never bought it, but I remember actually really excited about it. I thought it was cool what they showed.
Yeah, and it has a pretty interesting premise where you take control of a human survivor that, in a zombie apocalypse. And it features like a permadeath system where, if you die, you're kind of like a faceless survivor, so you don't really have a personality.
Mm-hmm.
But if you die, you could get back to your gear and pick it up and recover your gear. But if you can't if you die again, then you lose all your gear. So it has that mechanic that we've already very familiar with in other games. I don't know if I've ever seen it in a zombie game, or maybe there's zombie games that have it, and I haven't seen it myself. But what set this game kind of apart was the gamepad. It used the gamepad better than any game at launch, really, and including a lot of Nintendo's offerings. It was just so good. It was really rough, for sure. And the updates, once the game kind of bombed sales-wise, the updates kind of dried up. But, I'll get to that. This is a game that Ubisoft actually approached Nintendo to develop a mature game on the Wii U. So that's how it came about. And it was, like I said, it was not profitable. And there was another exclusive that Ubisoft had for the Wii U called Rayman Legends that prompted Ubisoft to make a multi-platform game once it saw that ZombiU was not really being profitable. And also the sequel was canceled, unfortunately, due to the same, reason.
I heard the director of Rayman Legends actually was, he got pretty pissed off when he found out that they were going to release it and then they wanted it to be multi-platform. Because I remember Ubisoft was actually on a roll in at least utilizing the gamepad very uniquely for both games. It was actually probably the more exciting thing was their two games.
Yeah, and what made that game... So, again, some people have probably played it because I think it's made available for free on, like, PlayStation Plus and some stuff like that. And it gets a lot of hate. But I feel that if you played that game on other systems, you're missing out so much of what made that game great. First of all, if you play that game in 1080p or 4K or whatever, it actually looks pretty bad. It doesn't look great. But for some reason, on the Wii U at 720, really, it has a muddy, grungy,
yeah, because whole apocalyptic look. So
yeah, it actually, believe it or not, it complements the look of the game even more because it is a dirty game, right? And the textures are low res, and it's not really a technologically advanced game, but when you add the low resolution and kind of the muddiness of of that, and it actually starts to look pretty cool because it fits the apocalypse nature of the game and the dirty grunginess. So I never really had a problem with the visuals on the Wii U, but then yeah, sure, you play it on a PS4 at 4K or whatever the resolution was, and it's like, okay, it just looks like a mobile game, super sharp, and it loses all that, really dirty, grungy, zombie kind of feeling, I think. So this is one case where it actually, the game has done a disservice by just cleaning it up. It's almost similar to how when you get like an old PlayStation or N64 game, and on the, CRT, it looks, it looks okay, it looks fine, it looks gorgeous in some cases, but then you blow it up to to a resolution it was never meant to be, and then it's like, ooh, that looks kind of rough.
Yeah, I heard that was actually a similar problem that they had originally with the first remaster of Resident Evil 4. I mean, I know they changed the textures, but it didn't do it any services by heightening the resolution without properly tweaking things. I remember the PS3 one was not very good looking.
Yeah, some games don't hold up under magnifying glass for sure. But kind of going back to what really, I mean, the visuals weren't why. I mean, even for its time, the visuals were like ho-hum. But what really makes this game stand apart, like I said earlier, is the Wii U pad. Right now, I know a lot of people didn't like the Wii U pad, and it wasn't used great for a lot of games. So it's mostly used as a map or whatever.
Inventory and stuff.
Inventory, whatever, which is cool, but it doesn't really justify the screen. But here, man, what's really cool about this is that well, funny enough, yeah, your inventory, right? You manage your whole inventory on the gamepad, but it's actually really good because what happens is, so when you have a backpack, and then when you use your inventory on the gamepad, you go from a first person view to a third person kind of camera view where you see your character going through his backpack.
Mm-hmm.
And you're vulnerable, and the camera is kind of like a bird's eye view of the character, so you can't see. You could only see looking down on your character from a camera up above. You can't see ahead of you. You can't see anything else. Only your character from a down's perspective, I guess. But what that does is, as you're going through your inventory, you're vulnerable, completely vulnerable. So you have to really go through your inventory while keeping an eye on the TV because zombies or whatever could come at any moment and get you as you're going through your inventory on your gamepad. and
Doesn't that kind of
you
mimic real
wouldn't
life? Do you like because your viewpoint is
yeah,
looking down and
kind
having
of,
to look
yeah,
up a
kind
little
of.
bit? You know.
And if the camera is close enough and far enough to where if you really catch them coming right at the edge of the camera, you could really switch quickly turn off your inventory and then kind of fight them off. But if you're not paying attention, and there was times where I was going through my inventory and all of a sudden, I'm being grabbed. I'm like, holy crap, what the hell? And you die fairly quickly in that game as well. So the tension is always there because of the way you manage inventory, and also you use the gamepad for stuff like to scan areas. You lift the gamepad up and you can scan areas. And when you're using the sniper scope, you put the gamepad up almost to the TV. And you see the scope on the screen, and you move the pad forward and back, I think, to zoom in and out. And it just does so many cool things with the gamepad. It justified the gamepad for the Wii U, especially at launch. And then the combat's kind of interesting as well because you have kind of like I'm not sure what you call it, like a cricket thing.
Oh, it's a cricket bat, yeah.
Yeah, and you could pummel zombies with it, but it has a certain rhythm to it. It's not as easy as you think. And it takes some skill to actually hit them with that. And you do have guns and machine guns, whatever, but ammo is so limited. I mean, it truly is survivor horror. A lot of times you're just better off using your bat or whatever, but it's a gamble because combat is not easy, even with one zombie. The game is very unique. Now, it's not perfect. Like, it does so many cool things, but the loading screens are insanely long. I mean, it's just, I think they're like a minute and a half or something.
I heard it did have horrible loading when it came out, yeah.
Oh, for sure. And
that's why I think they said dying sometimes literally felt horrible because you're literally dying. You're
or going from one area to the other and then realizing, oh no, I went to the wrong section.
Yeah.
Now I need to go back.
Yeah, I don't think my brother would have survived that game.
Yeah, but it's really cool because it almost has like a Dark Souls feel to where like you get to like these little kind of you have bases or whatever where it's like your control center where you have like a little bed where you could save and you could rest. You have like an inventory kind of a box, almost Resident Evil style, where you could store things to make more room. And so if you go out into the the main sections, you really want to make it back to your base so you could save, because if you don't make it back, then you die. And then you have to tell yourself, is it worth going back to that zombie-filled spot to pick up my backpack? Because remember, if you die, you lose your guns, you lose everything. So you have to get back to that spot, get your backpack, and you probably died for a reason because there's some zombies around or whatever. And, and if you die, then you lose your backpack permanently. So there's a risk-reward kind of thing. And it also took advantage of the messaging system that the Wii U had. What was it?
It was the Miiverse?
Miiverse, yeah. So people could leave you little messages, and they would come up as graffiti on the walls and on the floor,
which was actually cool. I actually thought Miiverse was a cool idea.
Actually, very much like Dark Souls. I think Dark Souls has a similar system.
No, it does actually. Though, didn't they utilize a certain mechanic in here where when you did die, it was like you just took control of a different survivor, and you would find that survivor's dead body with the backpack.
Okay, so. Yeah, so that's kind of goes into the permadeath thing where you're recovering. I say your backpack because, it feels like your backpack. But yeah, you're right. You're actually recovering. When you die, that character that you're controlling dies. And you take control of another survivor. And you go back and you recover their backpack. So it's pretty cool. And if you look at if you're looking at the notes, I put the picture there. And, this is from the Wii U version, and you can kind of see the lower resolution. It's a little blurrier than on a PS4 would be super sharp.
Yeah, but it does have a nice atmospheric look. I do like the look of it, though.
And hopefully it comes through in the picture that kind of the lower resolution kind of gives it more of a realistic look to it. But when you really blow it up to 1080p or 4K, I forget what the remakes are at, you just kind of lose that. I mean, it looks cartoony more so than a little bit of a realism or, kind of like the dirtier look I was saying that the Wii U one had. And this is one of my favorite Wii U games, honestly. I had so much fun. This was what Resident Evil should have been. I mean, remember, Resident Evil 5 and 6 were coming out, during this time, and they were like, this is not really Resident Evil.
I remember
and
that.
This game comes out, and this game's more Resident Evil than Resident Evil. It's not a perfect game, but Capcom, ironically, would go into a first-person mode.
That's true.
With a later game. And I think that this game really got maligned on the PS4 and Xbox One because it was missing what made it so unique, which was the gamepad, in my opinion. And it got a bad rap. It honestly... sometimes a game will get a bad rap for being, oh, this is not a great game, and then people just kind of continue that narrative. And it's not a perfect game, but I really, really liked the experience. And, that's my first kind of hidden gem.
Well, I actually do hope to take a look at it at some point, maybe even borrow it from you, because I know I really was interested in it, but I never got around to playing it, and I never bought it either. But I always thought it actually would have been quite fun.
Yeah, maybe in the future it might be episode specific kind of one. Who knows? You never know, right? Or maybe you could stream it at some point. But
that actually would be pretty fun.
Yeah, I think you would have a great time. That's my first game.
Alright, so moving on from the apocalyptic setting, we're actually gonna get into, I guess you could say, this is very anime influenced, big time. So there was a DS game,
We go from one to the
yeah, I know. So this was a DS game that I played, God knows how long ago, called Custom Robo Arena. Now, I remember the first time I ended up actually seeing how it was when one of my other brothers bought it, and he was playing it, and, at the time, it has that DS download play. God, I miss that. I really do miss that. So the DS download play, and, we got to do a couple verse things. I really loved it so far, but they give you a very limited amount of mechs when you're this player who doesn't have the cartridge. So I bought the game. And first off, let's just say that the game has a very unique sprite world that it has. So I have very charming sprite visuals. This is very much like a mix between Gundam and Yu-Gi-Oh! So you have Gundam, that Gundam influence. You got these little robots, and as I recall, this was the fifth.
It looks 3D though.
It is 3D, but in the battles it's 3D, but in the exploration it's 2D with sprites. So it's basically like.
And it's a DS game, right?
Yeah,
so
it's a DS game.
Understand what kind of 3D we're talking about here.
No, I know. I said it's a really old DS game, but it was how should I put this? It was published by Nintendo, and I just don't think it got as much attention as it did because it was like the fifth entry.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it was.
I never knew it was published by Nintendo.
Yeah, it was the fifth entry in the series, and it's funny because this is a big topic on this. Okay, so it's Gundam in the fact that there's these machines, with the weapons, and they're robots, and they can boost around with jets, and they have all these different weapons. But then it's Yu-Gi-Oh! In the fact that these robots are small, almost you could almost say maybe a little model size, I wouldn't say it's not as big as a toy, but a model, a figure, an action figure, and they're they can be controlled by the mind, I guess you can say. And there are these games and tournaments and arenas that, kids, it's a big thing for kids where they're fighting each other with these little weapons. And usually it's a safe sport, and they have little portable battle arenas where they fight. And that's where the bulk of the game takes place, in these battles where you fight other people with your custom robos. And the Yu-Gi-Oh! Aspect is very much that, you got all these crazy characters and plot points where everything revolves around, this game. I guess you can say the battle where the diving games and the custom robo battles and stuff like that. So it's actually got a very 90s vibe. A lot of the characters are drawn very much in that older style. A lot of the dialogue is very inspired by that. The music feels very old-fashioned too. And it just takes its time with everything. And that's the one thing that I think throws people off a bit on this game, is it takes its time with everything. I mean everything. like literally day by day. And every time a day passes and you do all these, story beats and battles throughout a day, when you go home, you literally have dinner and breakfast with your family every day in that game. I kid you not.
Very Japanese.
Yes, and then the father talks about, like what he's doing at work, which does involve, of course, custom robos because he's like a scientist. And, you have discussions with your sister and your mother. And, it's very in-depth. And I'd say it threw some people off for the reason that, sometimes the dialogue can be kind of very dull, but then it can be very silly and be full of personality and energetic. And you have all these crazy assortments of characters and villains. And you have your two friends who you come to know, Liv and Dennis. And it all around was a really fun game because it felt like you were playing a really big anime cartoon, kind of like a show. But the battling is where it was really fun because you have all this customizability between your robos, and you can replace all the arms, you can replace like the boosting, you can replace the head, and there's all these different types of actual robos. And you have all these different weapon types like missiles and your gun, what your boost attack is like. So as I said, it's for a DS game, it's actually really, really impressive. And it looked like a lot of love went into making this game because the lore in it is so extensive that you literally there are classes in the game that you can read actual material like articles and books on all the history of the robos and this and all this technology and stuff, and there's literally tests in the game that you can take to get things from them, and it's crazy. Like, there's so much love put into it. I wouldn't say it's for everyone. It's a very long game, but my brother and I had so much fun in those arenas when you're fighting with the robos and all the crazy weapons you get to have. A great multiplayer, by the way. It's just a very unknown game when I think about it. A lot of people actually do miss it.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I didn't know about this game until you brought it up on your list.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know it's Big Brother GameCube game. And I did play that game back in the day, and I had a lot of fun with it. Now, I didn't pass it by any means, and I didn't, but I remember playing it, and it was a lot of fun. And actually, it might be a rare game now. I think it's actually a rare game nowadays on the GameCube, but I wonder how closely these two are related as far as gameplay. This one has the, arena in the title. Sometimes when they add something like arena, kind of indicates it might be something different,
Well, funny enough, I actually do think that the DS one came out after the Game Boy one.
The GameCube?
The GameCube, yeah. It came out after the GameCube one, pardon me.
And it did, yeah, for sure it did.
And it's weird because the GameCube took on it tried to be a more realistic looking style, like a little more edgy.
Well, it did have the kind of like a cel shady look, but you're right, it was a more powerful system. It did have, this one has a little bit more of a chibi kind of, robot look maybe? Not chibi look, but the robots are a little kind of
they're more boxy and simple looking. Yeah. Very, actually, you could almost say kind of a little more old-fashioned Gundam looking, which is where you can tell it was inspired. But I think they went back that direction only because I think the DS, obviously, as I said, it's easier to do that on the DS than, would be like on a GameCube. It's much easier to make on the GameCube, like all these more advanced stuff. They did have one skin in that game that looks exactly like the one from the GameCube one, obviously lower textured. But it's kind of funny how this game was so extensively made on the DS, and it has all these crazy things in it.
No, you know what? I have this game.
Custom Robo Arena?
I do.
Where?
On my DS, I have an R4 card.
Oh, I was wondering if it was the R4.
So I should try it out and see what the hoopla is about. I'm gonna try it out later.
Hey, tonight. We could actually test at some points the multiplayer because the multiplayer was pretty fun back then. So
you still have it, right?
I still have it. I have the chip.
Oh yeah.
So part of me, just on bringing up this episode, made me want to get back to it and see if I wanted to finish it. I just remember when I went back to it back then, I just don't remember what my objective was like on that day. And so I'm like kind of like lost, and I don't remember if that game was good at telling you where to go, like after you did something.
Joseph, do me a favor. Do not let me die before I sit down with you and play Custom Robo Arena on DS and 3DS.
I know, right?
Download play, please.
It would
do
be
me a
pretty.
favor.
It would be
Don't
pretty
let
fun.
me. Yeah.
Don't let us forget about this.
That needs to happen.
Yes, I do swear. You can tell in these podcasts we literally keep talking about games. We're like, oh my god, we haven't done that. Oh my god, we haven't played multiplayer that. Like, God, what is wrong with us? So to quickly finish out though,
Yeah.
I just thought the type of game it is though, I will say falls into that goofy cliche that, as I said, this is very Yu-Gi-Oh like. You have everything revolving around some special type of game. With Yu-Gi-Oh it's a card game. With here it's like Robo stuff, and obviously in here it feels a bit more like it makes more sense for the reason that these Robos can actually, if the safety mechanism is taken off, they can actually harm people. So you have like illegal Robos that can actually use real weapons, and even to the point where police officers in that game have their own, which I think is funny, and there's a police force that allows them to use it. It's a bunch of crazy, goofy things that happen in the game. So it's what they call, as I said, it's very 90s. It feels very, very 90s while being just very, very anime flavored and just all around a really fun game. Not perfect, but a fun game nonetheless.
Man, the DS just had an embarrassment of riches when it came to games.
Not to mention though, just look at the color. How colorful that game looks in that image though.
Yeah,
it's a very, very and let me not forget, sound effects and the effects themselves. I have to say, for being a DS game, I loved the effects.
So, Joseph, my second hidden gem is a game called Winback Covert Operations in North America. Or, if you're from Europe or Australia, Operation Winback. It's funny how they reverse those, right?
I know.
So, it's a third-person shooter developed by none other than Omega Force.
Wow.
On the N64 in 1999, and then came out on PlayStation 2 in 2001. Yes, the same Omega Force from such games as Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors. That Omega Force, right? It's pretty interesting.
Weird, though. I've never imagined them to make a third-person shooter before they started making all the Dynasty Warrior games.
Dude, they made so much. I mean, it's insane. Like, you look at their catalog and it's like, what the hell? That's what I like about Japanese studios. They'll take on tons of work. They have passion projects, but they also, they do what they have to, And I really respect how much content they crank out. But this game, it actually had a second game called Winback 2 Project Poseidon, I think, on the PS2. But it's not very good. So we're not gonna talk about that one. So this story follows now. I hope I pronounce it. Is it Jean-Luc Cougar?
No, it's Jean-Luc Cougar.
Jean-Luc Cougar. Okay,
I'm still laughing at that name though.
So it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? I mean, he's right there with Solid Snake and some other badasses in video
similar
games.
Outfit when you think about it.
Yeah. Who I don't know who thought that was a cool name, but he's a secret agent. And you're infiltrating a laser satellites command center, blah blah blah. Who gives a crap, honestly? Now, more importantly, this game, I remember this game. This game was featured kind of heavily on magazines, and so let me come back with me in the DeLorean, Joseph. Where we're going, we don't need any roads. Yeah, I know that's bad. Okay, so I was an N64 owner, and I was pretty kind of, jealous that PlayStation owners had Metal Gear Solid, what we know now and what they knew then to be one amazing game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted a Metal Gear-like experience on the N64. And this game was kind of being touted as a Metal Gear, the N64's Metal Gear. In some places we're even calling it a Metal Gear Killer, etc. The hype was there, man. And I got swept up. I'm like, hell yes. Put it in my veins. I want this, right? So I bought it day one, and it was not a Metal Gear Killer. But what it was a, pretty good, decent third-person shooter, right? It was pretty unique back then. Now, it's rough, but what was very unique about this game is that I had never experienced a game like this. It had a cover system, and so it was you were controlling the character in third person, and very much like Metal Gear, but instead of an overhead camera, it was a behind the back camera, kind of like Resident Evil 4 or Gears of War, and it had a cover system, so you could lean up against a car or a building or anything and take cover, and then enemies would be in cover themselves, and then they would shoot you, and then you would come out of cover and then shoot them, and then get back in cover. And then you could duck while in cover, and then while you're ducking, you could come out of cover and kind of sort of in a crouch run or walk. You could get to another cover spot and then take them out. Does that sound familiar to you? What does that remind you of?
Every single third-person shooter out there.
Specifically Metal Gear. I'm sorry, not Metal Gear. Well, Metal Gear in some ways, but Gears of War. Yeah, Gears of War. But I was thinking Metal Gear because another way that this game, I feel, influenced Metal Gear directly. This is the irony, because this game was supposed to be a Metal Gear wannabe, a Metal Gear Killer, a Metal Gear for the N64, and it was nowhere near that. But in its own weird way, it actually influenced future Metal Gear games, because this game. So while you're in cover, your guns have a laser sight. So as you come out of cover, you use the laser sight to target the enemies. And it also has a lock-on, sort of like the C targeting in Ocarina of Time. But and once you're locked in, then you could move your laser sight around their body, to target specific parts. And that is straight up Resident Evil 4 with the laser sight. That is straight up Gears of War. Metal Gear added its own laser sight eventually. I mean, this game influenced, in my opinion, so many other games, and they did it better, for sure. This game had a lot of rough edges, but ironically, a lot of the stuff it was doing with the cover system, with the laser sight, the third-person aspect of it, etc., just completely influenced a lot of games that came after it. I could think of Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, Kill Switch. I've named Gears of War, Resident Evil 4 in a lot of ways as well, specifically with the third-person laser aspect. But what made this game pretty fun on the N64 was, after I got over the fact that it was not a Metal Gear Killer, it was just a fun action title. Pretty hard, but almost like a third-person time. Is it Time Cop? That arcade game where you're always in cover and then you come out of cover. I can't remember.
I think so. I didn't play. Don't get me wrong. I didn't play too many. I can't remember the name of that
Sega game where you're always in cover. You come out of cover. It's a similar feeling when you're in cover, come out of cover, bam, 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 get back in cover. They shoot you, come out of cover, bam, 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 and then so on and so forth. Right? Gears of War came to perfect that gameplay in his games, where the cover, shoot, cover, shoot, cover, shoot, and it also had a multiplayer that was pretty fun. It actually was more fun than it had any business being. It was a 4-player multiplayer, and it's pretty fun because you're in cover and you're trying to shoot your friend while he's in cover, and you're trying to pop out of cover at the same time while shooting each other. And,
why do I get this funny image of basically like from the Naked Gun, where they're literally like right next to each other and the thing, and they're just going bang bang, and they're going
what?
Bang bang.
You ran into situations like that where you were right, because the controls were very not great at times. It was unrefined and something like, it had a little bit of a floatiness to it, and the camera was, like a lot of cameras in those 3D games. So you could be right next to a person and struggle to shoot them. You actually had a better chance of shooting them from far away than they were right next to you sometimes, because you were wrestling with the controls as much as you wrestled, with other people. So yeah, the controls had issues for sure. And the visuals. I don't know if you saw the screenshots I put. The visuals are kind of drab. It had that N64 kind of fogginess and kind of muted colors, and so the visuals were drab, and the music was blah, and it had. I mean, you saw the name of the character. It's just as awful as could be, but that core gameplay loop of cover shoot was just so goddamn good, man. And for that, this game is kind of like a cult classic. It's one of my favorite. I still own my copy to this day. It's one of my favorite. Every time I go back to it, I just can't get enough of the cover system. But then the controls piss me off too, right? It's a dated game. So I have less patience for when you're experiencing something unique and for the first time, you kind of have more patience. So now it's rough to go back to. And like I said, games like Gears of War, they do it better now. And almost every other game that took from this game. But for this, I consider this a hidden gem, a forgotten classic. And while games like Resident Evil 4 have, rightfully gotten a lot of credit for innovations, Metal Gear as well, obviously, Gears of War and obviously Metal Gear for all of its innovations, and well deserved. It deserves that and more. This game has its own unique place in history, and its impact on video games is far more reaching than I don't think a lot of people really know. I'm not sure you knew, and I don't think you're alone.
Definitely not.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that. So for that,
I mean, if I'd known about a guy named Jean-Luc Cougar, I would have been much more interested. Definitely for first time for me. Do you think he ever looks at Solid Snake and is all like, well, at least I don't have a goofy name like Solid Snake, and Snake is kind of like, at least I have a franchise.
This guy's way more of a badass, because only a badass like that would have that kind of name and still continue on living. Honestly. So if you have that name and life still means something to you, much less take on a terrorist organization, then you know what, man? My hat's off to you. It's easy to be a superhero when you have a name like, Solid Snake. I mean, what the fuck is a solid snake, honestly? That's some kind of innuendo. But this guy really, really takes a cake. So there you go. That's my second hidden gem.
Alright, so this second game of mine, I definitely can't say it's didn't have as a little revolutionary spike as your one did, but I do think it was a great pushing off point for this developer who made a Flash game that was called Detective Grimoire before actually having a real and well-funded game known as Detective Grimoire Secret of the Swamp. Now, eventually, it just got renamed to Detective Grimoire and became the definitive first game. But you can find it on pretty much, I wouldn't say anything. It's more niche on the fact that you can find it on PC or mobile services like Android or iOS. So this game is a point-and-click puzzle game where you search for clues to talk to witnesses and, try to... When you find different things, it unlocks different paths to talk to different characters about to find out how this murder happened.
Is it kind of like Monkey Island?
I would say yes, but no. Because Secret of Monkey Island is definitely more of the fact that you kind of see your character walking around and you kind of combine things. I will say the dialogue system is very different. So I would say it's a different type of point-and-click game. I know there's different types. But the main attraction in this game is a lot of the characters and the well-done voice acting and mystery that they do. And the mystery, if you think about it, the case is simple, yet not in a way that makes you feel like it's too simple. I'll say, okay, so get this. So this is the synopsis is that it takes place in a tourist attraction, Boggy's Bog, in a swamp, where a monster is the prime suspect in a murder case. So already it's just this kind of crazy idea. It's very cartoonish. I get really good like Saturday morning cartoon vibes when you play it. It's amazing music. The music has such a great theme, very atmospheric. It just sets the whole game. And the voice acting and dialogue is witty and smart. It's beautifully animated. For being an official game from this developer, SFB Games, they did a fantastic job, which eventually actually got them a sequel. So I actually look forward to see.
Fully voiced?
Fully voice acted for everything. Everything that is done in that game is fully voice acted. And all the characters are amazing characters. They all really goofy personalities and like crazy different things. And and it's beautifully animated too. So it's a great cast of characters, very colorful cast of characters. And it does a great job at selling the setting and the mystery. And I love how your character, Detective Grimoire, is like, he's kind of a silly guy himself, but he himself believes that something just really doesn't feel right about this case. It's got a very good whodunit vibe where everyone feels like a suspect. A process of elimination while gathering clues. And there's little puzzles in there too. So it's a great mystery it's not outlandish, but it's good enough that it's got that great cartoon shenanigans feel of crazier characters. And I'd say the main thing for here is it's a very short game. Very, very short, but it's super intriguing and it really sells you on just how great they make these characters. So, like, you have Officer James, who's the guy who gives you the case. You have Richard Remington, who's the victim, who's dead. You have, like, Echo Everstone. I mean, look at these names. Like, they have Agent Folder. I mean, like, stuff like this is great. So,
I don't know about you, but they don't compare to the guy.
I'm sorry, there's no name that's going to compare in this list right now to that particular name. Yeah. I read that name and I was like, there's no way. But the characters are great because they're all very different. You have like a guy who's like a boggy fanatic who's he doesn't think himself a fanatic, but he's like a scientist in a way. And you've got like this camera crew or cameraman along with a filmmaker there who wanted to get something from someone. But the main one I want to highlight is a character known as Sally Spears. Sally Spears is actually this gift shop attendant, but she's voice acted in a very chill, sarcastic, charming way that's kind of alluring. It is, but she's a very important character to the fact that she's actually becomes a sidekick in the second game, which they made, which was called Tangle Tower. It actually doesn't even have a Detective Grimoire in the title, which I'm very happy. The sequel itself it does refine things a bit better, and it has better puzzles. It's got also complete voice acting. I'd say it's a great thing. So to kind of put a bit more focus on this, is Detective Grimoire is basically just a really well-constructed cartoon mystery game with high values on production and how it is presented to you. I wouldn't say it's like on the par of like really high-end, maybe point-and-click ones. It is rather short, but I would say it's definitely a gem that I don't think many people know about. If anything, people probably will know more about Tangle Tower than Detective Grimoire, where it basically started.
Yeah, I never heard of this game, honestly, but then I looked it up a little bit. Not a whole lot, because I wanted you to explain it to me. And the art style is very clean, very nice. In fact, if you look at the photo I put there of that little girl, she actually reminds me of the girl from Wind Waker, the bird girl.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? She has that kind of look. But the art style is very clean. I like it. It looks like it has kind of like a dialogue tree, almost. Or am I wrong in that? Am I misinterpreting what's on there?
I think that's where it differs slightly, is because you're mostly asking a lot of the characters very similar questions because they're suspects, right? But yet, every time you find clues or mysteries or things that relate to them that you find out, it unlocks more conversations with them that you can have that give you more insight to the mystery at hand. So it's a really it's a really cool way to experience. Like, it actually feels more like you are, being a detective, right? You are doing the process of elimination. And I will say that as soon as you start the game, you are just taken in by the voice acting. I kid you, it's that good. The voice acting is that good. You are taken in to experiencing this Saturday morning awesome cartoon feeling. With it's really good. I can't understate how charming the game is.
Nice. Going on my wish list. Alright, Joseph, so my final hidden gem game is it's funny because it's a hidden gem. I think it's a hidden gem. And it's very underrated. But, weirdly enough, it comes from Nintendo. And you normally don't think of Nintendo and think, what? Hidden gem? Right? Because everybody knows their library. Even stuff like Excite Bike and stuff like that, or Balloon Fight, are they're well-known properties. But this one kind of gets lost in the mix, or even I even heard a lot of people say it's just not a good game. And you know what? Screw that, man. I am here to defend this game. I bought this game when it came out, and it's one of my favorite, and it's Wario Woods for the NES. It also came out for the Super Nintendo, or Super NES, but I got it for the NES. I remember, it was $40. I remember the day I got it. And in fact, this has the distinction of being the last officially licensed NES game in North America. And it was developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1, or R&D 1. And also, another cool thing about this game is it is the only NES game to receive a rating from the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, the ESRB, which was inducted several months before this game was released. Kind of famously over the Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, whole yeah. Congress stuff, So it's pretty. It did come out late in the Nintendo's life. Gosh, I didn't put it down on my notes here, but I am gonna say it came out in 1994, and hopefully my memory's correct. But that sounds about right. What this game is, Wario Woods, is a puzzle game. You have colored bombs that drop. And you also have these colored characters that come down, like monsters or whatever. The colored bombs match the colored characters. So you have a pink bomb and you have pink characters, or yellow characters and yellow bombs, and green characters and green bombs, red, and so on and so forth. What's interesting about this puzzle game is that you control Toad. So imagine the horizontal kind of box. Like Tetris, right? So like the Tetris playing field, or Tetris Attack, or Puyo Puyo, is it? I think.
Oh yes, you mean that one that they keep showing off right now with the little tiny creatures that looks like Tetris,
or
with the vertical box.
Yeah,
that you
or
put
Dr. Mario, etc. You know that puzzle space that I'm talking about. It's a vertical box where all the puzzle pieces come down like in a Tetris game. And it's the same thing with Wario Woods, where you have that space, and then the ceiling could also come down on you depending on how good or bad you're doing, And as all these bombs and characters are falling down, and they have different speeds in which they fall down. I mean, it's standard puzzle stuff, right? The higher the level, the faster they come down, and the more you mess up, the ceiling keeps dropping on you, making it more difficult because things are stacking up and you're getting closer to the ceiling. And if you hit the ceiling, you lose. Or if you're playing multiplayer, if the other player clears their screen before you do, then you lose. What's unique, as I mentioned, is that you control Toad. So is standard kind of match the colors. So if you have 2 pink characters and you put 1 bomb either on top of it, either vertically, horizontally, or at an angle, then you wipe out those 2 characters and the bomb, and you clear that line. Or if you have 2 pink bombs and 1 pink character, you'll still wipe out that line because it's still 3 of a kind, right? As long as you have 1 bomb in there.
So basically, you can't, like, characters can't fall on themselves and eliminate each other. You must have a bomb to eliminate.
You must
those
have 1 bomb to eliminate them, and it takes 3 to clear. You have to have 3 to at least clear those 3, but you could eliminate 4, 5, 6, etc. at a time, right? However much. Mm-hmm. So you could obviously set it up so you maybe have 3 on one side, 3 on another, and then there's a space right in between those 3. And if you put a bomb right there, you clear all 6 at the same time.
Yeah, we played it once or a few times actually on the NES emulator. Or was it the SNES emulator?
Yeah, the Switch NES app. And again, it's kind of standard fare match. It's basically like match 3, right? Like you're matching the 3 of the same color. But what makes it unique, and I've said that a couple of times and I haven't answered the question, is that you're controlling Toad and you move him around the playing field. So the way you move the bombs and the characters kind of drop at randomly, and the way you move the pieces around is not by a cursor like Tetris Attack or the piece itself via a D-pad like Tetris. You actually have to move Toad around, and he could climb up the towers of pieces, or he could move all over the place, and he could pick up one thing, or he could pick up a group of things. So if you have a stack of two monsters, you could run to where the green bomb is, because maybe they're green monsters, pick up the green bomb, and then carry it back and lay it on top of the 2 monsters, thus eliminating that line. Or you could kick a bomb, slide it across the field, and it connects to 2 monsters, or another bomb and a monster of the same color, and wipe it out. And if you look at the picture I put there, Toad is actually he's holding a bomb over his head, thus eliminating 2 monsters that are kind of at an angle, right?
Yeah, I remember it was actually hard for me to adapt to it when I was playing it.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool because the controls are great. You could pick up something and then press up on the controller, and then you kind of warp up. So you could pick up like a group of like 6 things, press up on the D-pad, and you warp all the way to the top. I mean, the controls are great, and the puzzle aspect is so unique. I mean, how often do you play like a Tetris game or a falling block game, but the way you move the pieces around is by a character on the field, and it's just awesome. Tons of strategy, super fun, super underrated. And when you play multiplayer, which I think you and I did, but there was a little bit of a skill discrepancy, because I've played this game since it came out.
Well, yeah, I know.
Yeah, but it's tons of fun when you're playing it with another person because, whoever clears the board first, but, you're doing something. It's an advanced NES game. So the it used one of those advanced mappers that came out during that time. So the graphics are super colorful. It almost looks like a Master System game, really, with the amount of colors it has. And so super colorful. The music is nice and catchy. It uses a new character for the time, Wario, which made his debut on Mario Land 2, I believe, for the first time. And it has a whole bunch of options, from records to versus modes to single player. And if you see, I put a screenshot of Wario kind of talking shit to to poor little Toad, and that's part of the story mode of the single player game.
So I have a big question then, though. Okay, so it's called Wario Woods, and I just have one question. So what is Wario doing in that wood? What is he doing in the woods?
Well, that is a really good question, Joseph. Really good question. So, anywho, this game is great.
I know you're like, I do not have an answer for that. He's just in the
that
woods.
is a great question.
It seems like it's probably like a hermit or something.
Watch me deflect like a motherfucker. So, yeah, I don't know what he's doing in that creep, especially in that picture I put with little Toad.
Mm-hmm. Like, you're doing well, Shroom.
And you're doing well, Shroom. Yeah. Oh, man, that's a little ominous, but whatever. Wario gonna Wario. So, I mean, there's honestly, there's a lot to say about this game because of its uniqueness. But then also, at the end of the day, it's just a really, really damn well made puzzle game, and often overlooked. And that's why when we were playing the NES app on the Switch, I wanted you to try it out, because if anything else, it's a little piece of Nintendo history which they ignore and everybody else ignores. And I even heard people say it's a bad game, and that's just cannot be further from the truth. It just came out really late in NES life, and and then a Super Nintendo version came out as well, and it just got completely overshadowed. So, is it better than Tetris Attack? I don't know. I don't think so, because people really love Tetris Attack. I'm gonna say it right here and then. I like Tetris Attack, but I like this game way better. Yeah, I said it. Way better. Does Tetris Attack have Wario in the woods? No. So, there you go.
That's good to know, actually. I do it eventually at some point we'll get to that. I feel like it's one of those things where like people listening, you're like, oh, you're alone on this, Yvonne. But you know what? It's something definitely we should go and try again. There's so many multiplayer games out there that actually we should have.
The story mode is pretty cool, because I remember what's his name, Toad, walking in on Wario as he was digging a hole. And it looked like there was kind of like, a foot coming out of that hole. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's a late game. Nobody knows.
That'd be pretty morbid. Wario's Wario. I mean, technically, he wasn't really like. It's weird. I can never tell if Wario back then was even like first shown off as like a good guy, or was he like a bad guy?
No, he was a bad guy for sure, because he was the main boss in Super Mario Land 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then, funny enough, Nintendo did this a lot. It's pretty cool, because if you remember, Super Mario World was obviously Mario and Luigi, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you remember what Super Mario World 2 was? Who the main character was?
No, I actually don't.
It was Yoshi. Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. So they did something similar where they came out with, Super Mario Land 1, Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, and then Super Mario Land 3, Wario, blah, blah, blah. I forget the main title, but they actually called it Super Mario Land 3, but the whole game was about Wario. And in fact, that's one of the games I put on the list as, one of the future episodes that I'm hoping to do. So Nintendo did this thing where they would title something Super Mario World, Super Mario Land 3, but the main character wasn't actually Mario,
It's basically just using the name as a way to be like, hey,
yeah, and it worked, man. I saw Super Mario Land. I didn't know who Wario was really. I mean, I knew him as the bad guy and 6 golden coins, but the Mario name definitely got me to buy it. And actually, that's one of my favorite games, honestly. The Super Mario Land 3, Wario something, I forget the title, but that's such a great game. But anyway, I don't have much else to say about this game other than severely underrated, overlooked, and a hidden gem in my book.
All right, well, take note, everyone. If you want to find out what Wario's doing in those woods, play that game. So the last game we're going to talk about is actually a really unique, special game that I played, and that is Subsurface Circular. And it's developed by I don't know if I pronounced this properly, It's a Bithell Games, and
Looks
is known
like
as a
bit
Bithell
hell
short.
to me.
I know it does, but it's the guy's name. It's because the guy who developed it, his name is Mike Bithell. God, I must be pronouncing that wrong. But it's developed by Bithell Games and is known as a Bithell short. He has, I think, one other short that came out recently. Well, not recently, a while back. A similar name, but we won't get into that right now. So this game could actually be finished in about 2 hours. And I actually, to prep for this episode, to get my frame of mind back into it, ended up playing it thinking I was just going to, get a feel for it again. Ended up beating it again. It's just really a really enthralling game. So
look at you,
yeah,
man.
first
Taking this really serious. Well, you know what? To prepare for Mario Woods, I went into the woods by myself. How about that?
Did you see Wario or was something else catch your eye over there? So
I took a shot.
Stay safe, stay safe, Javon. So, anyways, the thing about this game is it really sets the mood immediately, right? It has a cool song and intro, like at the beginning of the game, and it gives you the vibe of these robots in this very industrial setting, very future industrial setting, but killer soundtrack that they had for this. It sets the mood and the atmosphere of the game immediately from the beginning. And it's got this very smooth graphical aesthetic and very simple animations that work well with robotic gears and how these are. And these robots are very utilitarianly built. Like they have full autonomous, autonomous, God, I'm pronouncing this wrong. Full autonomous thinking and function in how their bodies are. But they don't have any faces. It's basically just heads with, very mechanical looking. It's a very cool aesthetic. And the simple way this game works is that it's got this really clean interface and you mostly just talk. Like you pick dialogue options.
So is it a point and click as well?
No, actually not at all. It's very stationary. The entire game takes place on I guess you could call it a subway circuit.
I looked at the screenshots and I could not figure out what kind of game it was.
I know, right? So what it is basically these certain robots will enter this train ever so often, and you can talk to each of these ones. And each of them have different personalities and different dialogue decisions to talk to them about. But along with the very many different dialogue choices you can talk to them about, there are focus points that you unlock by talking to other certain robots where they say something that becomes a new focus point, like a new option, a dialogue option that you can pick to talk about, which involves these disappearances involving robots. And here, they call the robots techs. They're called a TEK, so a tech is a robot. And your main character is a detective tech, who is actually pretty much locked to the subway circuit, and the only time he goes, surface level is to upload his information to management of what he's done. So he's a smart, I love how in here they call, the robots call each other lows, mids, and highs when it comes to intelligence types. Yeah. So sometimes they'll say, I'm a mid-high level, or I'm a high-low level. And it kind of tells you what tier they are for intelligence. And you meet various different types of ones that have different intelligence. And some of them talk very human, and some of them talk very robotic-like. And it's not voice acted at all. It's all very quiet, and I think there's a good reason for that. The idea in the game is that every robot you talk to, you set up what they call a internal link, a communication link. And the idea is robots talk notoriously much faster than humans. So that's the idea in here, is that, it's all quiet because robots can talk to each other by just linking up with each other. So it's very well built. The world building in it is always done through the dialogue. It's amazing what you see without ever actually seeing. The conversations are that good. They're very compelling and intriguing, and even get into philosophy. It's very cool. It absorbs you. The intro gets you, and the dialogue just absorbs you in the mystery and some of the really some very funny dialogue too. And it reminds me of...
Is this a budget game? And not budget cheap, but since it's 2 hours...
You could call it budget-wise. It's pretty much on everything. I do way prefer it on the Switch. The Switch utilizes great HD rumble. because you're on a train, right? You're on like a subway
Yeah.
train, and every time it passes by things, you literally feel the top of the controller vibrate to the bottom, like if you're passing by something. And it does that every now and then when on the train, or when the train comes to a stop, or when certain music beats are playing, you feel all of it. It's really
Huh.
good use of the HD rumble. I really like it. So I'd say I preferred it the best on the Switch. It was rated a 10 out of 10 on Nintendo Life. And despite it being short and not having that much replayability, it is in a very compelling story. And it reminds me of a TV show, I don't know if you've heard of it, called The Booth at the End, where everything in that show happens at the booth at the end in a cafe, where you never see any characters do anything outside of that cafe. They come to a guy, they talk to him about certain things and events and happenings, and he, finds out things about them, or that they, or gives them information they want to know. And it's amazing what you think you saw, but you never saw it. Like, you never see those things happen. You only know of it by what people say. And that's what it reminds me of a lot. It's a very, by the way, great TV show. But this game does a very similar thing, where you feel like you've seen more things despite never actually seeing those things. And the dialogue is very intelligently structured. And in all these conversations that they talk about through observation, the different ideas between what a robot could think during this day and age, or what would happen in the future when everything becomes super reliant on machines. And there's very good, as I said, world building. So everything's as organic as possible, while cleanly allowing you to utilize it as using dialogue boxes in a puzzle-like mechanic. Very, very cool. So it's magnificent storytelling, I'll tell you that. No humans are ever shown in this game. And the puzzles, as I said, are simple or complicated enough to be very entertaining, but not overly complicated to make you literally be like, oh my god, what the hell do I do here?
And that's great, because nothing's worse than being stumped in something. And it's, the main draw of the game is obviously the dialogue, the story, and to be stuck because, you can't get through a puzzle.
Yeah. And they deal in this game with a lot of human emotion, despite ever really showing human emotion. Like, it's almost like a character study on different elaborate things with all these different robots that have different personalities. So I'd say it's a smart man's game. It's a smart man's game. It touches upon some really deep concepts, and the ending is very powerful. Like, there is no right answer at the end of the game. And it's just everything builds to this fever pitch. There's cool twists and turns. And by the ending, you're just kind of like, whoa, okay. And it's impressive. There's no game quite like it. It's very short. I'd say if you find it on a nice sale, like, get it. But it's definitely worth just those 2 hours.
Well, that's kind of how I feel about Wario Woods story mode. By the end of it, you're really thinking. It really leaves you thinking of what you just saw. Really.
I'm sure this is in a very different way, though. But yeah. But yes, like I would say that.
What are you saying? That I can't play a thinking man's game, but you can?
No.
Are you talking ish?
No, I'm just basically saying that I'll bet you the thing that involves Wario is probably either more comical or slightly morbid for whatever I'm thinking about. But I'll just say this, that it's a heavily influential game. And also, if you've ever heard of the game Thomas Was Alone, it's actually by,
for sure.
Yeah, it's by the same developer who actually made that. So you'll find a funny Easter egg in that game. Just to let you know, you'll find a funny Easter egg in that game. If you do find a certain character, make sure to talk to a story about him. You'll find a very funny Easter egg involving that game. So I'd say, like, if you ever do get it, give that a try. Because I did not know what this certain character was talking about until I found out that, it was the same developer of Thomas Was Alone. So I say it's the last game for me. It's really, it's quite an experience. As I said, I got enthralled back into it, where I ended up just finishing it at the end before this episode. And I was just like, damn. There's a reason why this is a hidden gem. It is a hidden gem.
Will make me go look at this game on the eShop later tonight is the fact that I think I have to try it to really know kind of what you're talking about, right? Because you gave me you painted a really good picture, but it just seems like such a unique game, and the screenshots really aren't giving me much that I'm super curious, and I want to. I can't imagine it being an expensive game because it seems like a short game. Yeah, so I really want to try it out now, and and it's 2 hours, so it's not a huge commitment, right?
Yeah, it's like a good detective, watching a good detective movie.
Yeah, and what was interesting here is that, and I think this has been a theme whenever we do these kind of lists. You and I just have such different tastes, and just like our lists are never really the same.
That's true.
And which makes sense, right? Because that was our intent when we thought of this podcast. That you and I kind of come from different times and backgrounds and etc. So the fact that we both came up with a hidden gems and they're just completely on the opposite end of the spectrum adds such variety to an episode, in my opinion. I know I'm kind of patting us in the back a little bit, but just looking at the list, I don't think any other episode kind of gives an example of what we were going for when we created this podcast, more so than this episode. And you could just see the modern retrospect part in our hidden gems list.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. It's actually, in my opinion, more fun having the contrasting opinions and differences in the game types. Not only is it very more informative for both of us, but it actually shows you that the different aspects that we wanted to go for. So, it's good to pat us in the back every once in a while. I mean, we do need that every now and then. So, but yeah. I'd say you're definitely right on that. I had fun listening to yours. And I had fun talking about mine. I get really into it sometimes. So, yeah, I'd say I'm very happy with the current state.
No, for sure. Because, if you went on here and you said, oh, my hidden gem is Kung Fu for the NES, I'm like, hell yeah, that's a hidden gem. But I know that game, right? I know that's a hidden gem myself. But you're coming at me with, subsurface circular. And I'm like, what in the holy hell is that, right? Or or detective.
What in the bit hell it is?
Huh? What in the bit hell is that, right? So, but that's what I like, because these are games that I would have never heard of or paid attention to or even tried, because they're nowhere near up my alley. But the fact that we're doing these kind of episodes, has gotten me to try out things that I never would have tried. And the process kind of opening my horizons to other stuff, because we have such limited time that you really only want to play or watch or whatever the stuff that you want to get to. And having not be forced, but almost, kind of doing a project where you have to set aside some of the stuff that you're, dead set on trying to try something completely new that you never would have given it the time of day, and then turn out to be such a unique experience. I think that's great, and I'm really enjoying that aspect, honestly.
Me too.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of What Happened in the Woods. We release new episodes every week on a variety of video game topics, as well as having game-specific episodes, along with some other surprises coming soon. We hope you stay tuned. Just go. Just do that part.
You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everything else. If you enjoy our ramblings, please feel free to subscribe, rate us, or leave a message through email, social media, or voice, so we can hear your feedback on today's topic, because we really, really like that feedback. If you want more retro hits and modern bits, just hop on back. Yeah, have a good one.
Bye, everybody.